It was April 1926, and London had been shrouded in gloom for a week as the country teetered on the brink of a fiscal meltdown. The threat of a general strike cast a long shadow. Outside 17 Bruton Street in Mayfair, beneath a bleak sky, reporters clustered together in the chill. They nursed steaming cups of tea and devoured sandwiches graciously provided by the aristocratic homeowners. Stories and gossip flowed as they waited for something, anything worth printing. The headlines kept rolling in. On the 21st of April, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini narrowly escaped an assassin's bullet. Weeks earlier, in Riga, Latvia, negotiators from both sides signed a treaty to end the Polish-Soviet War, establishing a border between the two countries. For the reporters in London, bundled in trench coats and tipped hats, their assignment may have felt trivial by comparison. Yet within the walls of the white Palladian-fronted house with Corinthian columns on either side, a different vibe prevailed, one of pure, undiluted joy. It was there, in the early hours of the 21st of April 1926, at precisely 2:40 a.m., that Princess Elizabeth, the Duke and Duchess of York's firstborn child, and King George V and Queen Mary's first grandchild came into the world, a beacon of new life amid a gathering storm. The Duchess, Elizabeth, had been in labour for hours. Sir Henry Stratton, the surgeon, eventually made the call for a caesarean section. It went well, and the baby girl was healthy, weighing 6 pounds, around 2.73 kilos. She stood third in line to the throne at birth, behind her uncle, the Prince of Wales, and her father, the Duke of York. No one realistically expected then that her father would become king or that she would eventually accede to the throne. As the reporters kicked their heels outside, news of her birth remained private for a few hours. The first to be told were Their Majesties the King and Queen, who were at Windsor Castle. They drove to London that afternoon to see the newborn child. A little darling with a lovely complexion and pretty fair hair, Queen Mary later wrote in her diary. The Duke of York also penned a letter to his mother saying, "You don't know what a tremendous joy it is to Elizabeth and me to have our little girl." Despite their royal rank, the Duke and Duchess, Albert and Elizabeth, were regarded as attentive parents for the time. Elizabeth wrote to her mother on the 28th of October from Sandringham, "My darling mother, the baby is very well and now spending the entire day taking her shoes off and sucking her toes." They hired Clara Knight, known as Alla, as a nanny, who handled the nurturing care, almost serving as a surrogate mother. The little princess was baptized 8 months later at Buckingham Palace by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the aloof Scot Dr. Cosmo Gordon Lang. She was named Elizabeth Alexandra Mary. This was a moment of joy after what had been a turbulent time. Through the war and after, the king had stood as a symbol of grit and royal resilience. At home, strikes and Irish uprisings simmered, but reforms and Labour's rise kept revolt at bay. Fear of Bolshevism held people to the steady ground. King George sidestepped politics, preferring instead to embrace spectacle. At the 1924 Empire Exhibition, crowds came, drawn to the royalty's power on full display. In public, he was the king and a family man, an image carefully crafted, but in private, he lived relatively simply at York Cottage, far from royal splendour. He had a fierce temper, and his bond with his children was at best strained. His stern parenting style had lasting consequences for his children. He was gruff voice, gruff manner. Not cruel by intent, but cruel by effect. When he barked, everyone around him jumped. He famously told his friend Edward Stanley, the 17th Earl of Derby, "I was afraid of my father was afraid of his mother, and I'm going to make damn sure my children are afraid of me." His dark humour cut deep. Once young Edward asked about babies and where they came from. George replied eerily that they flew in, wings chopped off. The young Prince Edward was haunted by the image for weeks.